Protector Mkhwebane has recommended that President Cyril Ramaphosa take disciplinary action against Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba. She found that Gigaba violated the Constitution and the Executive Ethics Code by lying under oath in the Fireblade Aviation Court battle. Gigaba was afforded an opportunity to respond to the allegations, but allegedly failed to do so. The complaint in this matter was lodged by DA MP John Steenhuisen. Public Protector Mkhwebane addressed the media a little earlier.
The final report which I'm issuing relates to an investigation which was lodged by the member of DA, Mr. Steenhuisen, against Minister Gigaba for violating of the Executive Ethics Code and the Executive Members Ethics Act. Mr. Steenhuisen attached to his complaint a judgment delivered by the Gauteng Division of the High Court on 14 December 2017 in the matter of Fireblade Aviation versus Minister of Home Affairs. In terms of the judgment, Judge Tupton held inter alia that there is no escaping the conclusion that the minister has deliberately told untruth under oath by telling a deliberate untruth of facts central to the decision of this case. The minister has committed a breach of the Constitution so serious that I could characterize it as a violation. In this regard, it is the contention of Mr. Steenhuisen that Minister Gigaba not only lied under oath, but also acted in breach of his constitutional duties and the Executive Ethics Code. Following my investigation, I sent Minister Gigaba a Section 9 notice to afford him an opportunity to respond to the provisional findings. I gave him 10 days from date of the notice within which to respond. Unfortunately, there was no response which was received accordingly. And let me also stress the point that in this matter, I was not investigating issues that had been before court, because in terms of Section 182(3) of the Constitution, I cannot investigate court decisions. Accordingly, my focus was on whether or not the minister's conduct as found by the court was consistent with the relevant provisions of the Executive Members Ethics Code. I found that the allegation that the Mr. Gigaba violated the Constitution and the Executive Members Ethics Code when he told untruth under oath was substantiated. As a member of the Executive, telling an untruth under oath or before a court of law is a direct violation of Section 165(4) of the Constitution and paragraph 2.3b of the Executive Ethics Code, as well as paragraph 4.1.3 and 4.1.4 of the Parliament Code of Ethics. By breaching the above provisions of the Executive Ethics Code and Parliament Code of Ethics, Minister Gigaba violated Section 96 of the Constitution, which states that members of the Cabinet and Deputy Ministers must act in accordance with the Code of Ethics prescribed by national legislation. The minister's aforesaid conduct is in violation of the code, which requires members of parliament to act on all occasions, especially the ministers, the executives, the MECs, the premiers, in accordance with public trust placed in them, discharge their obligations in terms of the Constitution to Parliament and the public at large. In addition to the findings, I also made the following observations. National key points are strategic installations as regulated by the National Key Points Act 102 of 1980, such as international airports, military bases, which requires special security. Therefore, any person employed at such national key point may be vetted under the National Strategic Intelligence Act 39 of 1994. The executive needs to consider processes which should be followed and the level of approvals for utilization of national key points by private companies. I now turn to the remedial action, and I direct as follows. The President must take appropriate disciplinary action against Minister Gigaba for violating the Constitution, the Executive Ethics Code, and the Code of Ethical Conduct and Disclosure of Members' Interest for Assembly and Permanent Council members. The President must, in terms of Section 35A of the Executive Members' Ethics Act, within a reasonable time but not later than 14 days after receiving this report, submit a copy thereof and any comments thereto with the report on any action to be taken in this regard to the National Assembly.
Well, for more on that story, we're now joined on the line by political analyst Professor Somadoda Fikeni. Prof, thanks very much indeed for joining us. A fairly damning finding by the Public Protector. Remedial action says the President should apply the appropriate disciplinary actions against the Minister. What kind of action might that be?
Given welter of many accusations, allegations, and now the findings against Minister Gigaba, might be very the President to even start the disciplinary action rather than just to lead. So that is the ultimate path. Even when he leaves, Parliament will have challenge not dealing with the issue of perjury, because many of the leaders, when they leave, they go to Parliament, and will be the one now that will be soaking pressure of whether it's...
Hello, Prof, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. All right, so being fired perhaps is the least of his worries, given that perjury is a crime. This could escalate to a much bigger problem for him.
Certainly, without any doubt, he could be charged for lying under oath, and that would be one strong signal or example. So for him, voluntarily stepping aside, apologizing, expressing his regret, and that he's going to make amends and, redefine himself, might be the best next thing. But if he still resists against the welter of evidence, then he might actually leave, not under the conditions of his choice.
So the North Gauteng High Court ruled that the minister lied under oath as far back as February this year. And so one must ask the question, the African National Congress's National Integrity Committee failed to take action then. What does it say about its organization, this committee?
Well, I think that for many years, the National Integrity Committee of the ANC has been emasculated by the politics of factions, and it has been trying to reposition itself at the moment. But what is lacking is the political backing, because it is not a legal structure. Its findings have to some kind of direct support politically that will begin to have serious reputation to take action and have teeth.
All right, I'm going to ask you to try and step into the mind of the President here, because he could have taken action as well as far back as February, and he's allowed the courts and the system to do what it does. Do you think that was deliberate on his part, so that in the end the system will cleanse him of some of his problems, challenges that he may have been facing?
Politics is the art of the possible. It was both deliberate, and that is what was most practical. In around February, they were faced with the major thing of removing President Jacob Zuma. And whilst the supporters of President Jacob Zuma then were reeling under the shock of him leaving and mobilizing, he realized that his chances of having to remove Gigaba may not have the full support in the executive. And if you read carefully the trend, he has allowed legal processes to eliminate, to neutralize most of his political opponents without him getting his hands dirty politically.
So do you think what the president does next now will set a precedence, and so that any other ministers in the future found wanting will be able to look at what happens to Minister Gigaba in the next few days as a template of what might happen to them?
Certainly, it will be seen as a template, but it has a precedent. Remember that the public protector rulings in the past had been used by the president to remove some of the ministers. That was now President Jacob Zuma. It was only later on that he simply did not go along to remove them.
What are we to read into the public protector saying that Minister Gigaba did not defend his accusations, the complaint filed against him? Could that be seen as an admission of guilt, or it was an oversight? What do you think?
It might be admission of guilt, or it might just be acceptance of a reality that there was nothing he could do that would change the facts. So it's an admission of guilt, but the worst case scenario might be a contempt of the process with the hope that he would actually be immunized.
All right, so what happens next for him as far as his political career is concerned? Could he possibly survive this?
It's unlikely. The pressure is growing. The sex scandal, though it may not have been direct, the Home Affairs issues, the appearance in the Zondo Commission, the only thing that can happen now is the downward spiral in terms of his political fortunes.
All right, Professor Somadoda Fikeni, that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the program. That was Professor Fikeni talking to us about the public protector saying that Malusi Gigaba, the Minister of Home Affairs, she found that he did indeed lie under oath and broke the ethics code, executive ethics code, and that the president should now take disciplinary action against him. And we'll keep a track of that story for you and what happens next.